I stand before you today to tell you something that may unsettle you, something that may shake the walls you have built around your comfort. The truth is this: the universe is not interested in your smallness, in your excuses, or in your desire to hide behind routines. The universe has bigger plans for you, and when it decides that your season of sleep is over, it will stir storms, break bonds, and ignite fires you never thought you could withstand. You cannot turn away. You cannot return to the slumber, because once you have been awakened, once the light pierces your spirit, the world you once knew no longer exists. And if you stay with me until the end of these words, you will understand not only why awakening comes, but why it is the greatest gift you will ever receive. When the universe begins the process of awakening within you, the first sign is often the breaking of illusions. It arrives like thunder, sudden and fierce, shaking the ground beneath everything you thought you knew. The people, the roles, the masks, the comforts you once wrapped yourself in begin to unravel before your eyes. And you find yourself staring at the pieces of a life that no longer makes sense. What once gave you certainty now feels hollow, like a song you have memorized but no longer wish to sing. That is the beginning, and though it feels like loss, it is not loss. It is liberation disguised as chaos. For years, perhaps for decades, you walked in a world built on illusions. Illusions of permanence, illusions of control, illusions that told you, if you work hard enough, if you play your role well enough, you will finally find peace. You believed that titles, possessions, and approval would anchor you. Yet the universe has a way of pulling back the curtain to show that the anchor you clung to was tied to sand, and no matter how much you pressed down, it could not hold you steady. The job that once defined you collapses, the relationship you thought was eternal fades, the dreams you carried since childhood turn to ash. This breaking is brutal, yes, but it is also sacred, because illusions are prisons, and prisons are not destroyed gently. When the walls crack, it rattles your bones. You mourn, you rage, you ask questions that have no answers. Why me? Why now? Why must everything fall apart? But within that grief lies the seed of awakening. The universe is whispering through the rubble, you are more than this. The breaking of illusions is not cruelty, it is mercy. For how long could you have lived confined by falsehoods, mistaking the temporary for eternal, mistaking approval for love, mistaking survival for life? Think of it this way: a child believes in the magic of shadows, sees monsters where only furniture stands. At first, to lose that illusion is painful. The child cries, begs to keep the comfort of belief. But then comes a deeper freedom, the recognition of what is real. Awakening is much the same. The illusions that crumble were once your comfort, but the universe knows you cannot build truth on lies. You cannot live fully while shackled to what is false. And so the shaking begins. The breaking of illusions often arrives with heartbreak. The person you thought would never leave suddenly does. The friend you trusted betrays your confidence. In those moments, you are forced to see that you had built castles on shifting sand. Love that was conditional, love that was performance, love that was only reflection of need. It falls away so that you may learn what true love is. Or perhaps the illusion breaks in your career when the job that consumed your energy no longer lights your spirit. You realize that climbing ladders built by others can never bring you the joy of walking your own path. The illusion of safety, of stability, is exposed for what it is, a fragile disguise for fear. And yet, as painful as it is, the breaking strips you bare in the most honest way possible. Without illusions, you are left with yourself, your raw, unpolished, unmasked self. And for many, that is terrifying. Because who are you if not the roles you played? Who are you if not the expectations you carried? Who are you if not the mask that smiled while your heart ached? The universe answers, you are more, you are vast. You are not the illusions, and losing them is the beginning of discovering the infinite depth of who you truly are. The breaking of illusions is like the cracking of an eggshell. The chick inside cannot live if it refuses to break the walls that once protected it. At first, the shell felt safe, warm, a sanctuary, but it was also a cage. To live, the shell must shatter. So it is with you. The illusion served you once, protected you from truths you were not yet ready to face. But now the time has come, and the shell must break. The life you were meant for cannot exist within the old boundaries. And so the universe takes away what is false, not to punish, but to prepare, not to wound, but to heal. You cry over the broken pieces, but one day you will look back and realize those pieces could never have built the foundation you needed. They had to be torn away to make space for something truer, something unshakable. Perhaps your illusion was that happiness could be bought, that a bigger house, a finer car, or a certain number in your bank account would finally silence the hunger in your soul. But when those things arrive, the hunger remains. You eat and still feel empty. And then the universe steps in, breaking that illusion, so you may discover that joy is not in possessions, but in presence. Or maybe your illusion was that your worth came from how much you could give, how much you could bend, how much you could please others. But one day, exhaustion catches you, and the universe whispers, you are worthy because you exist, not because you perform. The breaking of illusions is never gentle because illusions cling tightly. They feel familiar, and we mistake familiarity for truth. But the universe does not deal in half-truths. It tears down what is false so that what is real can rise. And though you may resist, though you may weep, the breaking is necessary. Without it, you would live your whole life asleep, chasing shadows, mistaking cages for freedom. So when the illusions break, let them. Let the job you outgrew fall away. Let the relationships that no longer honor your spirit dissolve. Let the dreams that no longer serve your soul die their natural death. Do not fight to resuscitate what was never meant to last. Because on the other side of that, breaking is a freedom you cannot yet imagine. The universe is stripping away what you are not, so you may finally stand in the power of what you are. And though it feels like the end, it is truly the beginning. The breaking of illusions is the universe's way of telling you, wake up, there is more. You were never meant to live half asleep, clutching lies and calling them truth. You were meant to awaken. You were meant to soar. The moment the illusions fall away, you are thrust into a space where transformation becomes inevitable. It is not a gentle unfolding. It is a tearing, a burning, a shedding of skin so raw that at times you wonder if you will survive it. Transformation does not arrive dressed in comfort. It comes clothed in restlessness, in unease, in the undeniable ache of becoming. You are no longer who you once were, but you have not yet become who you are meant to be. You live in the in-between, and that in-between stretches you, tests you, and reshapes you in ways you could not have prepared for. Imagine the caterpillar in its cocoon. The soft body that once crawled across leaves in sunlight is now trapped in darkness, dissolving into a form it does not yet understand. The old self must disintegrate, and in that disintegration lies unimaginable discomfort. It cannot go backward. It cannot return to crawling. The only way forward is through the pain of becoming. So it is with you. Once the universe calls you into awakening, the cocoon of transformation wraps around your life. And though it feels suffocating, it is the sacred place where wings are born. The discomfort of transformation often begins with restlessness. The things you once enjoyed no longer feed your soul. The habits you clung to lose their flavor. The conversations you once entertained feel shallow, almost unbearable. You sit among friends, but your heart whispers, "I don't belong here anymore." You rise each morning, but the rhythm that once felt natural now feels forced. This restlessness is the universe pushing you, nudging you away from what is familiar toward what is greater, but that greater is not yet revealed, and so you wrestle in the void of uncertainty. And in that void you ache. The ache is not just physical, it is emotional, spiritual, mental. Your soul feels stretched thin, as though every fiber of your being is being pulled in opposite directions. You crave answers, yet none arrive. You pray for clarity, yet silence greets you. This silence, this ache, is not punishment. It is the pressing weight of transformation, molding you into something stronger, more expansive, more real. Like clay on the potter's wheel, you are being pressed, stretched, reshaped. And every turn of that wheel feels like loss of control, yet in truth, it is divine hands shaping you. The discomfort of transformation often strips you of people. Those who once stood at your side may drift away, not because they are cruel, but because they cannot journey with you where you are going. The vibration of your spirit changes, and not everyone can rise with you. The loss hurts. It feels like abandonment, but in truth, it is alignment. You are being cleared of what no longer serves your evolution. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, is removing what would only weigh you down as you rise. Yet in the moment, it feels like loneliness, and loneliness is a discomfort that cuts deep. Transformation also tests your patience. In a world that craves quick fixes and instant gratification, you are forced into a slow unfolding. You want the wings, but you cannot rush their growth. You want the clarity, but the answers will not arrive until you are ready to receive them. And so you are asked to wait, to trust, to breathe through the uncertainty. That waiting grates against your old self, the part of you that wants to control, that wants to know, that wants certainty at all costs. Transformation denies you this comfort. It teaches surrender by stripping you of control. And surrender, though beautiful, feels unbearable when you first encounter it. You will feel torn between two selves. The one that longs for the familiar safety of the past, and the one that hears the faint call of the future. This tension will feel like a war within your chest. At times, you will want to run back to the illusions you once knew, because at least they were predictable. At least they gave you the illusion of control, but something inside refuses to let you retreat. That inner whisper grows louder. Forward is the only way. And so you stumble forward, half in fear, half in faith, learning step by step that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to walk with it. The discomfort of transformation will strip away your masks. You can no longer pretend to be who you are not. You can no longer smile in places where your soul aches. You can no longer sit silently in rooms that suffocate your spirit. This stripping is painful because masks were once protection. They shielded you from rejection, from judgment, from being seen too clearly. But the universe is relentless. It removes every mask until only your naked truth remains. And when you stand in that nakedness, trembling and uncertain, you feel exposed. But exposure is not your enemy. It is your freedom. The body, too, often feels the weight of transformation. Fatigue settles in, sleep becomes restless, emotions rise like storms, unexplainable and intense. Tears come without warning, anger erupts without cause, joy flickers and fades like a candle in the wind. You feel as though you no longer know yourself, This is because the old self is dying, and death is never gentle. But with every tear, every sleepless night, every storm of emotion, you are clearing space for the birth of the new. The discomfort of transformation is a furnace. It burns away what is false. It melts the metals of your being until only gold remains. But while you are in the fire, all you feel is heat. You question, you doubt, you wonder if you have been forgotten. Yet the fire is not destruction, it is refinement. The heat does not come to consume you, but to reveal you. And though you cannot see it yet, you are becoming radiant in ways you cannot imagine. And so, when you find yourself restless, aching, lonely, uncertain, know that you are in the sacred chamber of transformation. The discomfort is proof that something is shifting, something is growing, something is being birthed within you. You are no longer who you were, and though the future feels uncertain, the discomfort is the bridge between the two worlds. It is the necessary tension of becoming. After the storm has torn through your life, after the illusions have shattered and the fire of transformation has scorched every corner of your being, there comes a silence so deep, so profound, that it unsettles you more than the chaos ever did. The storm at least had movement. The storm gave you something to fight against, something to brace yourself for. But silence leaves you face to face with yourself. And in that stillness, you come to realize that awakening is not only about the breaking and the burning, but about learning to dwell in the quiet where everything you once clung to is gone and nothing new has yet arrived. This silence is not ordinary quiet. It is not the kind you experience when the house empties or when the night deepens. It is the silence of the soul, a vast emptiness that echoes inside of you. The voices that once filled your mind, the chatter of ambition, the noise of comparison, the endless hum of distractions are gone. What remains is stillness, and stillness can feel like a heavy weight pressing against your chest. Many people mistake this silence for abandonment. They cry out, wondering if the universe has turned away, if the divine has grown distant, if they have been left alone after giving up so much. But the silence is not absence. The silence is presence in its purest form. Think of the land after a hurricane. The trees stand stripped, the streets are littered with debris, and the air carries a strange stillness. There is no rush of wind, no song of birds, only the heavy hush that follows destruction. It feels eerie, almost unsettling, yet beneath the surface, life is preparing to rise again. The soil is drinking in moisture, the seeds are awakening, the earth is gathering itself for renewal. That is the silence after the storm. It is not lifeless, it is fertile. And so it is with your soul. During this silence, friendships may fall away. The people who once called you daily may no longer reach for you. The conversations that once kept you busy no longer find their way to your ears. You may check your phone and see fewer messages, fewer invitations. The silence stretches into your social world, and suddenly you are alone with yourself. At first, it stings. You feel forgotten, left behind. But soon you realize that this emptiness is intentional. The universe is creating space around you because the noise of others' voices would drown out the whisper of your own spirit. The silence strips away distraction so that you may finally hear what has always been speaking inside of you. It is in this silence that clarity begins to emerge. Not loudly, not all at once, but in small whispers that come when you are still enough to notice. A thought drifts into your heart. This is not the life I want anymore. A gentle nudge arises. Go this way. These whispers are not dramatic. They are quiet and persistent, asking only for your attention. If you had been surrounded by constant motion, you would have missed them. But in the silence, they rise like stars against a dark sky, subtle, yet guiding. Yet silence is not always comfortable. There will be days when it feels unbearable, when you long for the chaos again, just to feel something moving. The quiet will make you restless, uneasy. You will want to fill it with noise, scrolling endlessly, surrounding yourself with people who drain you, or returning to old patterns just to break the stillness. But if you resist the urge to escape, if you sit with the discomfort, you will find that silence has a rhythm of its own. It will begin to soothe you, to heal you, to teach you the art of being instead of constantly doing. The silence after the storm also brings you face to face with grief. You grieve the person you once were. You grieve the life that felt familiar, even if it was built on illusions. You grieve the relationships, the dreams, the identities that have fallen away. And grief in silence feels heavier because there is no distraction to dull the ache. Tears fall into the quiet, echoing in the chambers of your soul. But grief is part of the cleansing. It is the soul's way of honoring what was before stepping into what will be. In that silence, you begin to notice small things with fresh eyes. The way the sunlight enters your window, the sound of your own breath, the way a tree sways gently in the breeze. Things you once rushed past suddenly shimmer with significance. Silence slows you down enough to remember the sacredness of the ordinary. It teaches you that life does not always reveal itself in grand gestures. Sometimes the divine speaks most clearly in stillness, in simplicity, in moments so quiet that you would have missed them if not for the silence surrounding you. The silence after the storm is not a punishment. It is a sanctuary. It is the sacred pause between who you were and who you are becoming. The storm has emptied you, the fire has stripped you, and now silence prepares you. It is in this space that you learn to trust again, not because everything is clear, but because you are learning to hear your own soul without the noise of the world. You learn that peace is not found in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of stillness within yourself. In time, the silence will reveal its gifts. You will realize that loneliness has given you strength, that emptiness has made room for new beginnings, that the absence of noise has allowed you to hear the most important voice of all, your own. You will see that silence is not the end of the journey, but the soil from which new life blooms. What once felt like nothing will reveal itself as everything, and you will rise from that stillness with a heart steady, a spirit clear, and a soul ready for what comes next. When the silence has lingered long enough, when the storm has done its work, and the ashes of your former life have settled, something remarkable begins to stir inside you. At first it is faint, like the flicker of a candle in a room that has been dark for too long. You may not even trust it at first, but slowly, steadily, your inner vision begins to awaken. And this awakening is not the sight of your eyes, but the vision of your soul. It is the gentle unveiling of truths that were always there, truths hidden beneath the noise of illusions and the distractions of survival. When this vision opens, you begin to see life not only as it appears, but as it truly is. The awakening of inner vision is not dramatic in the way storms are. It does not roar or shake. Instead, it arrives softly in whispers and glimpses. A thought will rise within you that feels different from your ordinary thinking, clearer, purer, unclouded by fear. An intuition will nudge you, guiding you towards something you had not considered, and when you follow it, doors open in ways logic could never have explained. This is the birth of new sight, the sight that perceives beyond surface, beyond illusion. It is the seeing of the heart. You begin to notice patterns you missed before. Perhaps you find yourself looking back on relationships and realizing they were teachers, not just companions. You see how pain carved out strength in you, how loss created space for depth, how silence became a mirror for truth. Situations that once looked like failures are now revealed as stepping stones. People who hurt you are now seen as mirrors reflecting parts of yourself you were meant to face. This shift in perspective is the mark of inner vision awakening. You no longer see only events, you see meaning. You no longer see only endings, you see beginnings hidden inside them. It can feel strange at first. The world continues as usual, people rushing, arguing, clinging to possessions, chasing after shadows. Yet you stand still in the middle of it, watching with new eyes. What once consumed you now feels distant. The competition, the comparisons, the endless striving no longer hold the same power. You see through them as though a veil has been lifted. And in that clarity, a new sense of freedom rises. You are no longer bound by the illusions that once dictated your worth. You begin to live by an inner compass that points not outward, but inward. The awakening of inner vision also awakens compassion. Because you see differently, you feel differently. When you encounter someone angry, you no longer react with equal fire. Instead, you sense the pain behind their words, the wounds beneath their rage. When you see someone chasing approval, you recognize in them the reflection of the self you once were. Your heart softens, not out of weakness, but out of understanding. This compassion does not mean you allow yourself to be used or diminished. Rather, it means you carry wisdom that can discern without condemning, that can love without clinging, that can release without bitterness. Inner vision also awakens creativity. Ideas begin to surface that you never knew you carried. Perhaps you feel drawn to paint, to write, to sing, to build something that reflects the truth stirring within you. This creativity is not about impressing the world. It is about expressing your soul. It is the language of your awakened spirit, a way of giving form to the unseen. You may find yourself journaling thoughts that surprise you, speaking words that inspire others without trying, moving in directions you never considered. This flow is the universe expressing itself through you, using your unique hands, your unique voice, your unique life as its instrument. There is also a new sensitivity that comes with this vision. You become attuned to energies, to atmospheres, to the subtle shifts in people and spaces. What once felt normal now overwhelms you if it is out of alignment. Crowds drain you, shallow conversations bore you, environments filled with negativity feel unbearable. Instead, you crave authenticity, depth, truth. You seek places where your spirit can breathe. And while this sensitivity may feel like a burden at first, it is in fact a gift. It protects you, guiding you toward what nourishes you and away from what diminishes you. But perhaps the most powerful part of inner vision is how it transforms your relationship with yourself. For the first time, you truly see yourself, not just as a body, not just as a role, not just as a name in the world, but as a soul. You see your resilience, your courage, your infinite worth. You begin to recognize that you are not broken, but unfolding. You are not lost, but guided. You are not small, but vast beyond measure. This recognition shifts everything. Where once you sought validation outside, now you find it within. Where once you doubted your path, now you trust the voice rising inside you. There will be moments when this inner vision feels overwhelming. You may see truths you wish you could unsee. You may notice the falseness in people you love, the emptiness in pursuits you once cherished, the depth of wounds you had ignored. And yes, it can hurt. But vision is not meant to make you comfortable. It is meant to make you free. Freedom often requires facing what you once avoided, acknowledging what you once denied. The pain of clarity is far lighter than the weight of illusion, and once you taste truth, you can no longer stomach lies. This awakening is not a destination, but a continual opening. The more you honor it, the clearer it becomes. The more you trust it, the stronger it guides you. And as you live by this vision, Life begins to align in ways that once felt impossible. Synchronicities appear. The right people cross your path at the right time. Opportunities unfold without force. You realize that you no longer have to push against life. You only need to flow with it. The awakened vision allows you to see the currents beneath the surface, and when you trust them, they carry you exactly where you need to go. And so, in the quiet after the storm, you discover that your true sight was never with your eyes, but with your soul. What you see now cannot be taken from you, because it is not tied to the outer world. It is the vision of the eternal within you, the perspective of spirit that knows no end. And with this vision awakened, you will never again live blind, for you have seen the truth, and once seen, it cannot be unseen. The death of the old self is the most frightening and the most liberating chapter of awakening. It does not happen in a single moment, like a switch being flipped, but in waves, in layers, in slow dissolving and sudden breaks. It is a process of peeling back every mask, every belief, every identity that once defined you but can no longer hold the truth of who you are becoming. And it feels like death because, in many ways, it is. The person you thought you were, the character you played, the roles you clung to, all of them must die so that something greater may live. When this death begins, you feel it in your bones. You wake one morning and realize the things that once thrilled you no longer stir your spirit. The friendships that once gave you life now feel heavy, shallow, unsustainable. The dreams you chased for years suddenly appear meaningless, as though they belong to someone else entirely. You stand in front of the mirror and see the same reflection, but something inside whispers, "This is not me anymore." That whisper grows louder with time until it is undeniable, and the death begins. It is not graceful. It is not polite. The old self does not go quietly. It clings. It resists. It screams at you. Don't you remember how safe we felt here? Don't you remember how people loved us when we acted this way? Don't you remember how good it felt to belong when we wore that mask? The ego is a survivalist, and it will use every trick to keep you bound to it. You will feel guilt for changing, shame for wanting more, fear for stepping out of line. The old self thrives on fear, and as long as you bow to that fear, it survives. But the moment you begin to walk despite trembling knees, the old self starts to weaken. This death is lonely. People who once celebrated you may look at you with confusion, even disappointment. They may say you have changed, and they will not mean it as a compliment. They may accuse you of abandoning them, when in truth you are abandoning the version of yourself that existed only to please them. You will feel the sting of judgment, the ache of disconnection, but slowly you will learn that this loneliness is not emptiness. It is clearing. The death of the old self strips away what is false so that the authentic can stand. And yet it hurts. It feels like watching your house burn, even if that house was rotting. It feels like mourning a loved one, even if that loved one was a mask. You cry because you do not know who you are without the old self. You wonder how to live without the armor you wore for so long. You grieve not just the loss of the false, but the years you spent trapped in it. That grief is heavy, but it is necessary. It honors what once was while making space for what will be. There are moments in this death when you will feel naked. Without the old self to hide behind, you stand exposed. Your vulnerabilities are laid bare. Your truths rise unfiltered. At first, it feels unbearable. You want to reach for the old mask, the familiar role, the easy lie. But every time you try to put it back on, it no longer fits. It suffocates you. The universe will not allow you to retreat into old skins. You are forced to stand uncovered. And though it terrifies you, this nakedness is the birthplace of freedom. The death of the old self also brings with it a stripping of illusions about time. You look back and see how long you lived asleep, How many years were spent chasing shadows? Regret may try to creep in, whispering that you have wasted too much, but the deeper vision of your soul will remind you that nothing was wasted. Every moment, even in illusion, shaped you for this awakening. Every detour carved wisdom into your spirit. The death of the old self is not the erasing of your past, but the transformation of it into sacred fuel for your becoming. You may also feel the death in your body. Exhaustion will come as your energy shifts. Old patterns stored in your muscles, your cells begin to release. Tears may rise without reason. Memories long buried may surface to be faced, forgiven, and released. Your very flesh becomes a battlefield where the old and the new wrestle. And as uncomfortable as it is, this too is part of the death. The old self cannot just fade from the mind. It must leave the body, the spirit, the habits, the rhythms of your life. It is a full exodus, and the body participates in that release. But what is death without rebirth? Though you cannot see it at first, as the old self dissolves, space is created for something truer. You begin to hear your own voice without distortion. You begin to act not out of fear, but out of love. You begin to notice that your choices, your words, your steps carry more weight, more authenticity, more freedom. The false self had to die for this clarity to emerge. The death makes way for life. And so, though the old self dies loudly, clinging and wailing, your soul begins to rise quietly beneath it. This rising is soft, subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but it is steady. It carries you toward a life that no longer asks you to shrink, to perform, to pretend. It carries you toward wholeness, toward purpose, toward truth. And as the old self takes its last breaths, you find yourself no longer mourning, but grateful, because you realize the death was not your ending, it was your beginning. There comes a time on this journey when the crowd falls away, when the familiar voices that once surrounded you grow faint, and the companions who walk beside you no longer recognize the path you now tread. It is in this moment that the universe whispers the next truth of awakening. You must learn the courage to walk alone. It is not loneliness for loneliness' sake, nor abandonment as punishment. It is the sacred demand that you stand in your own light, without the crutch of others' approval, without the weight of others' expectations, without the comfort of the old familiar chorus. Walking alone is the soul's training ground, and though it shakes you, it also strengthens you in ways nothing else can. At first, it feels like loss. Friends drift, family members misunderstand, colleagues look at you as though you have become a stranger. You search for the old warmth in their eyes and find only distance. The conversations that once felt natural now feel strained, awkward, or shallow. You notice that you no longer fit where you once belonged, and belonging has always been a human hunger. The temptation to return to the old self rises, to shrink yourself again so that others will embrace you. But the universe does not allow backward steps. The path of awakening insists that you honor your truth, even if it means walking through silence and separation. Loneliness in this season can feel heavy, almost unbearable. The nights stretch longer. The empty spaces grow louder. You feel the ache of wanting someone to understand, someone to walk with you, someone to make the journey feel less daunting. Yet each time you reach outward in desperation, you are met with closed doors or quiet absence. This is not cruelty, it is discipline. The universe is teaching you that the foundation you must stand on is your own. Until you can walk firmly in your own essence, you are not ready to truly unite with others who match your vibration. Walking alone reveals your strength in ways you never anticipated. You learn that you can hold your own hand in the dark. You discover that you can be your own comfort when the world grows cold. You find that your prayers become deeper, your meditations more profound, because you are no longer leaning on others to fill the silence. In solitude, you encounter the raw presence of your soul, and though it may tremble at first, it eventually stands tall. This inner steadiness, born of walking alone, becomes the root of unshakable courage. The courage to walk alone also means facing the fear of judgment. You will be misunderstood. People will call you strange, rebellious, ungrateful, or arrogant for choosing your path. They will remind you of who you used to be and demand that you return to that version of yourself because it made them comfortable. To walk alone requires the strength to bear misunderstanding without shrinking, to endure judgment without surrendering your truth. It is to learn that not everyone is meant to understand you, and not everyone needs to. The only understanding you require is your own, and yet walking alone does not mean you are truly alone. The more you quiet yourself, the more you begin to sense the presence of something greater walking beside you. Call it the universe, the divine, your higher self. In the stillness of solitude, you feel whispers of guidance that were once drowned out by noise. You begin to notice synchronicities, small signs that remind you that you are being watched over, that the path may feel empty, but it is not abandoned. This unseen companionship sustains you in the hardest hours, teaching you that the deepest connection you will ever know comes not from outside, but from within and above. Walking alone requires discipline. Without the schedule of others, without the external push of expectations, you must learn to guide yourself. You rise each day and choose to move forward, even when no one is watching, even when no one applauds. This discipline becomes sacred practice. You discover the strength of self-responsibility, the resilience of self-motivation. And when you fall, as you inevitably will, you also learn the art of standing back up without waiting for someone else to lift you. Each stumble, each recovery builds a kind of courage that cannot be taught. It can only be lived. In time, the loneliness begins to transform. What once felt like emptiness begins to feel like spaciousness. What once felt like silence begins to feel like peace. You realize that solitude is not your enemy, but your sanctuary. In walking alone, you carve out the space where your spirit can breathe freely, where your ideas can blossom unfiltered, where your essence can expand without compromise. You no longer crave the crowd's noise because you have found music in your own stillness. You no longer beg for validation because you have discovered the quiet power of self-acceptance. And from this place, when new companions appear, they are different. They are not people you cling to out of need or fear. They are not relationships born of dependency or pretense. They are souls aligned with your truth, companions who walk beside you because they are also walking their own authentic paths. These connections are deeper, freer, more nourishing, but they only come after you have learned to walk alone. For only those who have stood firmly in their solitude can join in true union without losing themselves. The courage to walk alone is not about isolation. It is about foundation. It is about building the unshakable core of who you are so that when you stand with others, you do not dissolve into them. It is about learning that solitude is not absence, but presence. It is about understanding that walking alone for a season prepares you to walk authentically with others in the future. The path may feel lonely, but it is not empty. It is shaping you, sharpening you, strengthening you for what lies ahead. And so, though it hurts, though it frightens, though it stretches you beyond what you thought you could endure, walking alone is one of the greatest acts of courage the awakened soul will ever know. For it is in this aloneness that you discover the deepest truth. You were never truly alone. You were always walking with the eternal presence within you, the light that never leaves, the love that never abandons. And once you discover that, you are never afraid of solitude again. The moment of rebirth into purpose does not come with trumpets or the fanfare of celebration. It rises softly, like dawn breaking after a long and merciless night. You do not wake up one day and suddenly know every step of the journey ahead, but you begin to feel a current moving through you, guiding you, pulling you into alignment with something greater than yourself. It is as though the pieces of your shattered self, once scattered across the battlefield of awakening, begin to gather again, but this time not into the old image of who you once were. They reassemble into something new, something stronger, something truer. This is the rebirth into purpose, and it is the gift that comes after the death of the old self, after the courage to walk alone, after the silence and storms. Purpose does not always reveal itself in grand visions. Often it comes in whispers, in small nudges, in the quiet realization that what once drained you now feels foreign, and what once seemed impossible now feels inevitable. You begin to notice that your spirit ignites in certain spaces, around certain people, within certain actions. You feel alive in ways you cannot ignore. What you once tolerated now feels unbearable. What you once feared now feels like destiny calling. The rebirth into purpose is less about discovering something outside of you and more about uncovering what has always been inside, waiting for the noise to quiet, waiting for the falsehoods to die, waiting for you to be ready. This rebirth feels different than the old ambitions you once carried. Those ambitions were born from the need to prove, to impress, to be accepted, to be loved. But purpose does not bargain. Purpose does not perform. Purpose does not beg for applause. It simply is. It rises from the core of your being like a fire that refuses to be extinguished. You may try to reason with it, to argue with it, to postpone it, but it will keep returning. It does not ask for permission. It demands to be lived. The rebirth into purpose also feels like clarity after confusion. For so long, you questioned who you were, why you were here, what it all meant. The old self searched for answers in the world's validation, in material possessions, in fleeting victories. But now, the questions remain, yet they no longer frighten you. You no longer seek answers outside of yourself because you have learned to trust the answers that arise within. This clarity is not about knowing every detail of the road ahead, but about knowing with certainty the direction of your soul. You may not see the full map, but you recognize the compass. As purpose awakens, it begins to shape your actions. You start saying no to what once enslaved you and yes to what aligns with your soul. You find yourself walking away from relationships, jobs, habits, and roles that suffocated your spirit. At first, it feels terrifying, as though you are cutting away the last remnants of security. But soon you realize that what you are cutting away is not life, but death. You are pruning the branches that no longer bear fruit so that the tree of your life can flourish again. Every step you take in alignment with purpose may feel like a leap into the unknown, but it is always a leap into greater freedom. This rebirth into purpose also gives birth to a deeper compassion. Having walked through illusions, storms, loneliness, and death, you begin to see others with gentler eyes. You recognize their struggles as reflections of what you once endured. You no longer judge so quickly because you know how hard it is to awaken, how painful it is to shed, how frightening it is to walk alone. Instead, you become a beacon, not by preaching, but by living. Your authenticity shines as silent testimony that transformation is possible. Purpose is never selfish. It always overflows into service, into impact, into leaving the world lighter because you walked through it. At times, living in purpose feels like surrender. You are no longer driven by ego's relentless push, but carried by a flow that feels larger than yourself. You may not always understand it, and you may not always control it, but you trust it. You find peace in surrendering to the rhythm of your soul's calling. This surrender does not make you passive, it makes you powerful. For when you stop resisting the truth of who you are, you tap into a strength that fear could never touch. There is also joy in this rebirth, not the shallow joy of fleeting pleasures, but a deeper, quieter joy that hums beneath your days. You wake with a sense of meaning, even if the tasks ahead are small. Washing dishes, writing words, holding a conversation, all of it begins to feel sacred when infused with purpose. Life no longer feels like something you endure, but something you create. Even pain transforms. It no longer feels like punishment, but like chiseling, shaping you more fully into your essence. And though purpose is personal, it is also universal. Each rebirth into purpose contributes to the greater weaving of humanity's story. When one soul awakens and begins to live truthfully, it ripples outward, inspiring others to do the same. Your courage gives someone else permission to find theirs. Your authenticity awakens someone else's longing for their own. The rebirth into purpose is never just about you. It is about the light you carry, the light that becomes a torch in the darkness for others still searching. Yet this rebirth is not an ending. It is not the final chapter, neatly tied with a bow. It is the beginning of a new journey, a deeper one. Purpose is not static. It grows as you grow. It shifts as you shift. It expands as you expand. What feels like your purpose today may evolve tomorrow into something greater, wider, richer. This is the beauty of it. Purpose is alive as you are. So you step forward, no longer the same person who began the journey. The illusions have fallen, the storms have passed, the silence has spoken, the old self has died, the lonely road has been walked. Now what remains is the fire of purpose, burning steady, guiding you forward. You carry it not as a burden, but as a blessing, not as weight, but as wings. This is the rebirth into purpose, and once it has claimed you, life will never be the same again. So when the universe forces you to awaken, do not resist. Do not cling to what is falling away. Trust that the hand that shakes you is the same hand that will lift you higher than you have ever been. Awakening is not a punishment. It is a gift, a fierce, unrelenting, beautiful gift. And once it comes, you will never again wish for sleep because you will finally know what it means to be alive.